All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to LMS Customer Experience, a panel discussion. We have a wonderful panel here for you today to discuss how the customers of the LMS are utilizing the system. So we have Claire Ellis with Acorn Health, Dr. Nicole McMillan with Breakthrough Behavior, Dave Stevens over here at the Institute, and myself, Heather Morton, also with the Institute. Today on our agenda, we have for you, we're going to go over our learning objectives, some introductions, connected learning. We're going to talk about fostering professional development at all levels. So looking at interests, relationships, and opportunities that are presented to staff, the benefits that occur for clients, and how the LMS helps achieve professional development goals. So our learning objectives for today are to provide organizations with a thorough demonstration of how they can utilize the LMS to enhance professional development of all staff within their agency. We want to provide organizations with additional knowledge on how they can begin to set up a professional development program, providing examples from leading organizations like Acorn and Breakthrough, already incorporating this into their business, and to demonstrate how investing in professional development can have significant benefits to clients receiving services. So first off, we have Claire Ellis. Claire, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm happy to. My name is Claire. I am currently the National Director of Clinical Training and Development at Acorn Health. I am a BCBA. I live in Virginia Beach and previously worked in the clinic, Acorn's clinic there, but now I'm sitting in a more national seat, which is really exciting. My core values are lifelong learner and connection, and it's not on your slide, but humor was added this morning, so that's like my newest one. But thanks for
I
having me,
love
Heather.
that. Yeah, thank you. I love that. I love that one for you too, Claire. All right, and now we have Dr. Nicole McMillan.
Great, thank you. My name is Nicole. I am currently the Senior Vice President of Clinical Success, and I actually joined the Breakthrough Behavior team just over 90 days ago, which is crazy because we've just kind of jumped right in. My kind of buckets or job responsibilities include our Analyst in Training, or AIT program, quality assurance, research, and learning and development, which includes like our new hire training for our RBTs, and just ongoing professional development. And then our four core values, or five core values, are compassion, innovation, excellence, and accountability. My most favorite ones are compassion and innovation. I think they fit very nicely with kind of what my job responsibilities are at Breakthrough. And then I actually reside in St. Petersburg, Florida. Very not fall right now, still very hot at the beach. But I live with my husband, my toddler, who is almost 2 years old, and we also have two rescue dogs.
Wow, that sounds like you're awfully busy. I love that. All right, so let's jump right into what is connected learning. I'm going to pass this to you, Dave.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been thinking an awful lot about lately with CR Institute and our LMS and the various content that we offer is really trying to understand like what are those levers that we're helping organizations like Claire at Acorn and Nicole at Breakthrough kind of manage and manipulate to sort of increase outcomes, both clinically and business outcomes for their organizations. And there's this topic that's been getting more and more research and sort of evidence and that we came across called connected learning. So what is connected learning? And this is where it's the intersection of interests, relationships, and opportunities. And so what we find in some of the best ABA organizations that we have the privilege of working with is that if you are providing opportunities for your staff to pursue their interests and grow their skills based on their areas of interest, and you're able to connect your employees with other peers or mentors that kind of have that shared interest as well, and that there's opportunities in your organization for those who have kind of sought out and learned more with respect to their interests and their peer network and their relationships, and there's real world opportunities, that there's some really neat effects that are starting to get documented with some data and evidence. And if you'll go to the next slide, Heather can talk about some of the stuff that's come out. So Gartner Organization, which is a big research firm, they're mostly focused on kind of go-to-market activities for, companies, software companies, and so forth. They did a study in 2018 that included about 7,000 plus employees, where they did they basically had a survey that went through and asked a bunch of questions related to connected learning. And what they found was that if you are sort of do those three things, people can follow their interests, they have relationships that are around those interests, and there's opportunities related to those interests, that those folks are 25% faster to learn those new skills. They're 66% more engaged in their actual jobs. And this is a big one, I think, for ABA, is they're 4.2 times more likely to stay where they are and stay with the company. And the research says is they're 8 times more likely to be high performers. Now, obviously, that's a huge bar, and I wonder how they measured that. So the study is available if somebody wants to pay the $50,000 to get the actual data, but they're marketing it, and our hope is over the next year or so that with Heather and some of our organizations, we can actually start getting some of this data ourselves from some of these successful programs. But we found that fascinating. The retention is a huge issue in our industry, and there's a lot of components that go into to retention. Are they getting the hours they need? Are they getting the pay they need? Are they having the opportunities to learn and grow and so forth? And so our thought was, if there was anything we could do with our training packages, our content, our offering within the CR Institute and the LMS, to help increase retention, like that would be a huge benefit to our our customers and our organizations. And so what I hope to do today is just explore a little bit further, maybe specific things that you've all been doing, both Claire and Nicole at your organizations, to maybe help kind of realize some of these hopeful benefits that are going to come from the investment in professional development, connected learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really curious on how you guys are sort of tapping into the interests of your staff. Just to start off, like, how are you guys getting, the information needed for what your staff is even interested in learning about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sometimes can be the most challenging, is to really figure
Yeah.
out, what is going to motivate them the most. So really, anytime we have a continuing education event as an organization, we always require a survey following the CEU to then get access to that CEU certificate. So it's that contingency there. And I think most people are like, oh, not another survey, but it just maybe takes 5 minutes, if that. So it's a really low response effort way to get some insight into what the clinical team would like to learn about. And the survey always contains a question or two regarding what additional topics they would like to see covered in future CEU events, but also, how well did you enjoy the current CEU event? And was it relevant to your current job responsibility? So we can really get a sense of what's going to be the most impactful there. And then on an RBT level, as part of our employment engagement initiatives, we also have RBT focus groups, which are conducted by our clinical leadership, including our director of engagement, who's also a VCBA, to then use the ongoing feedback to really drive our organizational and clinical initiatives. And then, for example, our organization actually added several mental health days throughout the year to our team members as a result of these focus group meetings. So I think it was important too for us to share, the rationale, like, hey, like, you told us this is what you wanted, and so now we're trying to incorporate that within the organization. And I think, my hope too is that these focus groups can also discuss what professional development and ongoing training opportunities would be most interesting and beneficial to our RBTs.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah, that's really, really cool stuff. At Acorn, we have a few different ways that we are gauging the interest of our clinicians. We are we have a SharePoint site where people can go on and request. We have a CEU request, so like, hey, I want to learn about this, and it's kind of open anytime that anyone needs it. We also have on that same SharePoint an ability to request articles, so we can check and see if there's any patterns within that request system. Spoiler alert, it's not happening very often, but it's there, so we're still looking at it. We have some training and development check-ins on a regular cadence with our clinicians, which has been really cool to find out what people are asking for. We are kind of surprised at the amount of, for example, like caregiver training requests. So that's been one that's like come up quite a bit, and I'll talk about how that ties into some of the other interesting stuff we have. And we also hold a biweekly BCBA mentorship meeting where it's basically just open doors where any BCBA in the company can come in and say like, hey, I have a question about this. They can stay for the entire office hour, or they can essentially just come in, get their question answered, and be on their way, whatever they want. And then another really cool opportunity that we have within our training and development team is that I sit in on our clinical leadership team. So all of our senior CDs are in a room, like a Zoom room, once per week. And I'm able to sit in and kind of identify any gaps in the training that they're recognizing that they need. And we can just have that touch point. So that's really cool. But I think one of the most interesting ways that we gauge interest of our clinicians and kind of use that to spring to action is something that we call our clinical systems. And our clinical systems we have 10 of them at current, and they're organized groups of clinicians that are working on very specific operationally defined projects within the kind of confounds of the system that they've joined. So like, for example, the parent training field work, or the parent training system is one, or family training, I believe is what we call it. System, we kind of had some requests that like people need a little bit more guidance on maybe something surrounding the first family training meeting that they have. And so the family training worked for, I think it actually took them 2 quarters to create a guided fillable PDF that you can use before and during your first parent training session. And then they created a training to explain kind of the function of that sheet and just tips and tricks for meeting a family for the first time. So it was really cool because it was created by clinicians for clinicians, like on the ground. And then we were able to embed that in Central Reach Institute. So the training is up and running on Central Reach Institute, and it's part of our onboarding checklist for all new clinicians. So kind of all weaving back together to answer your question, it's just one way or a few ways that we gauge interest of our clinicians and try to give them what they need to be successful.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Like this is like exactly connected learning. Like we could start using this where you have these interest groups. People are kind of free to join however they, wherever their interests lie. Spend some time working with others who have self-selected to be in these groups, right? And then hopefully, opportunities come out of it, right? Like, hey, people are going to have that experience and move on to either other things or maybe even up in the company. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I find that so interesting. It also just seems like it plays right along with the growth of your company and the areas that you guys are focused on growing, so that clinician continue to sort of grow with Acorn, right? Because they're tapping in and joining in on these systems that you guys have in place. I think that's really cool.
It is cool. And it also each one of those systems has a system lead. So it's 10 more opportunities within the organization for growth and leadership, which is, I think, even cooler. So
yeah,
I think this might tap right into my next thought and question, which is how are you ensuring that your staff are able to sort of develop relationships within the organization? I know that can be tricky as BCBAs. We're in RBTs, especially, we're just running out in the field, and it can be really difficult to be connected and build those relationships. So I'd love for you guys to kind of speak on some opportunities. I think this might be one of them, Claire, that you guys do. But I know you guys also have this other great opportunity. Could you share that with us on how you guys are kind of developing those relationships?
Yeah, so obviously we have the clinical systems, and Acorn Health is a large organization. We're at 47 business units to date. So and we're across 7 states. So any opportunity that we can to kind of get a variety of different clinicians from different states and business units in a room together, and by room I mean Zoom, because that's where we are at right now. Which is kind of cool, when you think about it.
It makes it easier to get together once a week.
Yeah. It kind of decreases barriers. I mean, it has a whole other slew of issues, but whatever. Can't do anything about it right now. And anytime we can do that, we want to. We want our clinicians connected and building relationships for a variety of reasons. One, as everyone is on their journey as a BCBA to continue to develop their clinical expertise, we're going to get people that have really excellent skill sets surrounding particular topics, protocols, procedures, assessments, and we want other BCBAs to know about it for a few reasons. One, resources, and just that like friendly reminder that like, hey, you can be an expert in X, Y, and Z. Look, we have them in the organization. You guys can work together. You can find out how they're receiving their training, kind of their journey to get there, which is really cool. But besides the clinical systems, we do something called Eat, Drink, and Be Educated. And it all kind of started with like my lifelong dream of having a book club. And I've tried to like get them rolling a few different times. It's never worked. So what I did is I reduced some response effort, and what we do each month is we identify a webinar or a training on Central Reach Institute, and we say, hey, we're spotlighting this, and what we're going to do is then come together on the last Friday of each month at lunchtime. It's called Eat, Drink, and Be Educated, and we're going to kind of deep dive into the topic, provide you guys with more resources, do some breakout rooms to allow for connection, conversation, and it's a really great opportunity for continued learning and additional access to CEs, and then just relationship building. So that's one of the ways that we do it, and it's been pretty successful so far. I mean, I love it, so it's fun.
That is amazing. And I'm just going to throw this out here. If you ever want to invite one of our authors to that Eat, Drink, and Be Educated for follow-up, please do let us know, and we'll try to make that happen.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yes.
Yeah,
we'll definitely talk about it.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that is so cool. I know that I would have really enjoyed that when I was working more as a clinician, to be able to just dive and talk about CEU events rather than like, I'm just trying to burn through these so I meet the needs of my recertification, right? But I'm actually like taking it in, I'm learning, I'm collaborating with my peers. I think that's such a cool idea.
Yeah, it's been really fun. And I just want to be super clear. I did not create that beautiful flyer. Not in my skill set. So shout out to Ashley Sottelaire. It's beautiful. So.
I love it.
I was about to say, Claire, I loved the flyer so much that I went to our team and I was like, we need one of these. It looks so great. But also, you can't squash my hopes of a book club because that is on my list. But I feel like we also as an organization have been talking about like the challenges of getting started. So maybe we'll talk about that later because I don't want to give hope on that. But
and Dr. Hill over here at the Institute is also behind the scenes working on a very cool book club idea for CEUs, by the way. So stay tuned on that.
Awesome. I love that.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Well, great.
Awesome. So Nicole, I know you have some great things going on for building relationships. Can you share that with us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of right when I started my position, something super small we did to really just start to get that conversation rolling around clinical discussions was sharing a weekly research article with the team at the end of the week, which we call our weekly wisdom. And I also can't take credit for that title. One of my colleagues came up with it. But it's actually sent out to the entire team. So that includes both clinical and administrative positions, which we've actually really received great feedback about. So someone on the intake team was like, oh yes, like I'm not a BCBA, but I found this article really interesting and kind of helps me feel really connected to the clinical team. And a lot of times we also try to connect these articles to whatever specific clinical excellence initiative or goals that we have ongoing, all about a good theme. So I like to try to connect the dots across different things that we have going on. We also recently started a Breakthrough for You newsletter to again reach both our clinical and administrative teams. It contains organizational updates, team accomplishments like passing a certification exam. So for example, when we have someone in our AIT or analyst in training program graduate, we definitely want to let the whole organization know like about them passing their BCBA or BCABA exam. Different team member spotlights, and then other engagement initiatives. And then it also highlights our weekly wisdom articles from that month. So again, we're kind of tying things together across platforms. And then finally, one of our newest initiatives to really target that increase in collaboration and clinical community is through our monthly all analyst meetings, and kind of share those sentiments as clear as, feel like before we were kind of functioning in little silos and we weren't really kind of collaborating as one team. So these meetings are carved out in the analyst schedules in advance, and it creates an opportunity for training, which is awesome. However, we will also be starting client conceptualization presentations during these meetings. So probably about like a 15-minute presentation, then with like 10 minutes for questions at the end, in which our analysts will have an opportunity to more specifically collaborate with colleagues, share their client successes. So like, hey, I use this treatment package, like look at this amazing data, or troubleshoot those challenges, which I think is that most important part. So I'm really struggling, making progress with this particular client on this target behavior. Like, what are some ideas that the team has? Because right now, a lot of that collaboration is really centered around the unit or clinic level, with each region's supervisory team working together. But we really want to emphasize, like Claire has been discussing, that our team, in California is working with Virginia, who's also working with Florida, and so on, so that we're really connected across the organization. And hopefully these client conceptualizations will also be a great opportunity for our analysts to practice presentation skills in a large group setting as well. So again, I think our hope here is really that feeling of community collaboration will increase that overall job satisfaction, and ultimately increase our client outcomes, which I know is our main agenda for everyone.
Nicole, I love the idea, and I was just thinking, one of the things that we miss, I think, now that we're mostly virtual in all these conferences we go to, is there's no more poster sessions anymore. And so there's very limited opportunities for behavior analysts to kind of present breakthroughs or learnings or whatever it is through that poster. So when I hear you talk about, like, they have, each person gets to present something, like, that's awesome. You're hitting on so many sort of skills, in terms of presenting and organizing data to share and all that stuff, and then sort of passing it forward. Do you record those and make those available? Are you uploading them to the LMS? Do you have them as a repository somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll talk about our invited speaker series, I think, later on in our discussion. But now, as you're saying that, I'm like, we really need to start recording those all analyst meetings. I think, if it is a clinical training, for example, we had some recently on some standardized assessments that TRICARE is now requiring. And so we absolutely recorded those and then kind of shared those via OneDrive. But now, as we're building out our LMS, I absolutely, that's where they need to live and be shared. So thank you for bringing that to my attention, Dave, because we'll definitely have to be starting to do that.
Excellent. We'll just reach out to Heather and team, and we'll help you get going if you need any help there.
Yeah, sounds great.
Awesome. So I know you kind of touched on your analyst and training program. I want to hear more about that, Nicole, and sort of how you guys are using that to provide more professional development for your staff. Can you tell us a little bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's really one of my most favorite professional development opportunities we provide to our team. And supervision and mentorship, I think, is so important to the overall growth of our organization. And so when I joined the Breakthrough team, we already had, a pretty good structure in place. It was really just kind of refining the overall model, kind of going in and figuring out, okay, like what task list items, what competency checks are going to be completed at what time, and how do those analysts in training then transition into our larger organization once they graduate, once they pass their certification, into a clinical supervisor, BCBA or BCABA role. So the program really is designed to mirror a university cohort type model. So again, we kind of talk about fostering community, collaboration. I think sometimes that is missed, and just in the current state of our field with online programs, and they're really great, but sometimes you might miss out on those opportunities for more of that sense of community. So the way we built out the program is that there are several rotations. I think there's about 4, maybe 5 or 6, depending on how long it's taking people now with the 2022 guidelines. But you participate in group supervision and unrestricted activities with other team members in your rotation. So essentially, if I start rotation 1 with the same group of individuals, we're all going to kind of progress through the program together. If I'm having difficulty kind of grasping a certain task item, or I need someone to help role play with me for, to practice for a certain competency, you already have that, team there. And then also several of our clinical directors serve as rotation leaders for that group supervision. So that's also another professional development opportunity for them, because they get to kind of have a hand in that mentoring, for the future of our organization, but also for the field. And so I know that that's something that they've also, noted that has been really impactful for them professionally.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I
I
love
love the
that.
idea of
So
the
like
cohorts.
the
Sorry, Dave.
The cohorts is great because it's, I was just gonna say the cohorts is wonderful because like you build such great relationships, because it takes time, right? Like you got to learn each other, meet each other, learn interests and stuff like that. And it's the same way to your kind of clinical systems, Claire, where they're together for a long enough period of time to build some really meaningful and lasting relationships, or at least you hope. So, the cohort model is really, really interesting, cool.
Yeah, I think so too. And, we've gotten really great feedback from our AITs so far. And, one of my tasks is also to, be able to track our pass rates. And, as of right now, it's looking great. And, I think as we continue to move along with the program, I think that's going to be a really important outcome measure for us as well. But I think just overall satisfaction of the trainees with their training experience, how we can continue to modify it and just elevate, the experience that they're getting. As part of our transition from AIT to clinical supervisor, we have a 30 or a 90-day training track and like a clinical supervisor checklist. So essentially all the things that you need to have in your repertoire in order to be successful as a clinical supervisor at Breakthrough. And so what we've also done is kind of sprinkled all of those things throughout all of the rotations. So by the time, you finish all of your rotations, finished my program requirements, sat for my BCBA and passed, now I can transition right into, having that caseload and getting provided, more ongoing mentorship by my clinical director. But, administratively, systems, like clinically, I should have, everything I need, because that is such a big jump, right, from an RBT to a clinical supervisor. So again, really just investing in our team members that will be making that transition with us.
Yeah, especially considering a lot of the programs out there today, to go get, the approved programs, they don't really focus a lot on the supervising aspects of what it means to be a behavior analyst, or the leadership aspects and things like that. So that's awesome. Claire, do you do something similar at Acorn? Is there a mentorship program?
Yeah, it's fun. It's so awesome to hear other organizations kind of talking about this. This has been kind of nagging me for my entire career. Like, we need something more structured. We need something more structured. And so we're so thrilled to be kicking off our apprenticeship program. It's there's a lot of similarities between Dr. McMillan's program that she was talking about and ours. So that just like, one, excites me for two reasons. One, that I am like, we kind of nailed it. Like, if other people are doing similar stuff, and two, that other people are doing similar stuff. Our field is growing at such a quick rate. People are going to need high quality supervision as more and more people are kind of going through the process. It's just so important that we're really supporting people and creating behavior analysts that we can be proud of at the end of the day. So very similar. We have we call them phases instead of cohorts. People join at specific times throughout the year. It's application based. We have a portfolio, which is a permanent product of competencies that we've identified between clinical, professional, technical, and compliance skills. And it allows a really structured program for our BCBAs to follow too, to make sure that they're getting their students what they need and reducing the response effort for them, because God love our clinical supervisors. They're doing a lot of work in a lot of different buckets. We want to make their life as easy as possible. And then also we have a portfolio panel that we review things or review the panel, and it's not the supervisors that are saying like, yes, you can move on. It's an independent group of clinicians that are saying like, yep, you've got that, or no, you need to go back and do this. Because I don't know about you guys, but even in my experience as a supervisor, I mean, you create relationships with your supervisees, and sometimes you're a little bit blind to like their gaps, your gaps as a supervisor. And so it's just a really great way to kind of like maybe fill in the gaps somewhere.
Yeah,
So we're really proud of this.
you're definitely going to have bias like in both
Oh
ways,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That's great.
yeah. And so it's really exciting. So we have that as far as professional development. We have some really big clinical initiatives that we are rolling out. One of which our clinical advisor at Acorn is Dr. Hanley. So we work very closely with FTF Consulting. And we have a clinical goal of ensuring that all of our clinicians are familiar with the skill-based treatment protocol. And so we have some supported implementation there. And essentially what it is they do like an online 10-hour course through Dr. Hanley's website, and then we do BST. So these clinicians are identifying a client, they're partnered with a trainer, they're in a cohort for 10 to 12 weeks depending on what level of client need they have. And each week they're providing a video of implementation. They're getting feedback in the moment, going back out and trying again. It's a huge professional development opportunity for our staff. And at the culmination of that, every quarter we have grand rounds. So I think it's kind of similar to what Nicole was talking about as far as case conceptualization. So they present their case. These were our wins. These are the things we're still troubleshooting. Please help us. Group, like everybody kind of pay attention and help us out. But it's a really great opportunity for one, to ensure that we're reminding everyone that we approach problem behavior in this way. And two, that we have opportunities for people to present, get feedback, and we get to see client success stories. And a reminder that some of our more challenging clients, we can cause really meaningful change. So it's really cool. The other thing that we are really proud of as far as professional development goes is we have something called the Grove. And the Grove has essentially continued to sophisticate, but it is like our in-house university. We have kind of layers of trainings depending on what type of clinician you are, whether RBT or BCBA. But it's kind of broken up into 3 different phases. So we have our roots phase. So that these are just trainings that everybody needs to have in order to do their job well. Then we have our branches, and they kind of take 2 tracks at that point. We have our Nourish branches, in which we are providing trainings, access to webinars, cohorts, learning labs to continue to build clinical expertise. And then we have our growth path for those BCBAs that not only want to be incredible clinicians, but they are interested in a leadership position too. Because a lot of times, maybe you guys can challenge me on this if you think, we pull really high quality BCBAs and say, you are excellent at your job, please lead a team. With very little training, very little support, people get burnout, feel overwhelmed, think that they aren't great clinicians because they just haven't been trained in the skill sets that they need. And so we've got to do better by them. So that's our growth path. And then we have our canopy, which is for the people that are already in leadership positions. They kind of focus on seeing the forest through the trees, seeing the whole big picture, leadership continuation. So it's really cool. And we utilize Central Reach Institute a lot for those paths.
That is awesome. I just want to point out real quick, I love the branding and I love the grove. I'm going to imagine it's a grove of oak trees, and it's all tied together. I love it. It's so great.
Yeah, it is really cool. And as soon as we actually get our branding, I'll be able to share it with you guys. And it's awesome. Really awesome. So, again, not my
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's interesting, I've been thinking about we hear, Heather hears a lot every time we talk to somebody about the LMS and what we offer. This idea of mentorship programs always comes up, invariably comes up, really often. And, I always thought, like, 'cause we also work with university programs. We have some test prep products and things like that. We're helping kind of increase pass rates at some universities. And one of the things that has come up is, like, where does mentorship live? And some universities are talking about doing it and adding it on and stuff. But after hearing both of you speak about your programs, while there's a lot of similarities, I would argue like your secret sauce and your go-to-market and how you do things is baked into those mentorship programs. So when you come out of AIT with Breakthrough, you are molded into what Breakthrough considers to be a clinical supervisor, clinical leader, and likewise with your with the apprentice programship at Acorn, Claire, you've really sort of adapted, like, arguably a foundational structure of mentorship, just best practices, but you've really sprinkled in and colored it and sort of molded it into your own, to produce your own version or your own vision of what clinical supervision, clinical leadership means, at respective organizations. So I think it's awesome, and I think, you've sort of solidified in my mind that then one thing that we could do at CR Institute is perhaps even sort of make frameworks for people to implement their own mentorship programs, and we can kind of give people a starting point, because it's obvious, it seems like an amazing amount of work, and if we're able to kind of move that for people a little bit forward, I think that could be very valuable and beneficial to the organizations that are using us for some of their training.
Yeah, I would say it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were shaking your
So,
head when I was saying that, so I think you're using this to kind of build your version of the perfect clinical supervisor, to
Yeah.
help in your growth, right, and your outcomes.
Well, and that, I mean, obviously it's our goal. Like, our hope is that everybody wants to stay with Acorn, but ultimately, one of our core values is accountability, and we're accountable to the field when it all comes down to it. We are accountable to the field of behavior analysis and the people that we're producing, and saying, yes, you are ready to go and help and be clinicians. We want to, like, be able to sleep at night and stand by that.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
we're really committed
Yeah.
to it.
I
I love
completely agree,
that.
Claire. And that's like one of our core values as well, as accountability. And during our AIT orientation, I really emphasized that to them of like, we are accountable to you, we're accountable to our field, and this is also their training, their experience, their certification. And so really to instill in them of like, here's our chance to really make a large impact on the trajectory of their career, but also, the future clients' lives, the families' lives that they will be impacting in the future, and just the growth of our field in general. So I completely echo that sentiment.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Nicole, because now my like clinician side is thinking like, how do all these programs that you guys are putting in place to, do professional development with your staff, tap into their interests, tap into their relationship? How does that trickle down to the client to benefit the clients of your, that utilize your program?
Yeah, and I think Claire was speaking really well to, experts in the field, and ensuring that, our clinicians have easy access, or as easy access as possible to some of those experts. And so one of our initiatives has been our monthly invited speaker series. And so for our analysts, we have these monthly, which is really an opportunity to learn from an expert in the field, and we offer CEUs to go along with it. And then trying to tailor the speaker schedule to the identified interests from the clinical team. But I think our main objective here through all of these initiatives is really to have readily available access to the best practice information, whether it be recorded trainings like via the LMS, for us in the future, or live trainings, the literature, like through our weekly wisdom, or again, hearing monthly from those experts in the field. I think we're really hoping that it's going to have a pervasive trickle-down effect, into the quality of our clinical programming. And our goal, and I know something I've been talking a lot with our clinical leadership team, is that we really want to provide multiple layers of clinical support, right? It's not just going to be the one initiative that makes this large impact. It's going to be multiple, intentional, systematic, really layers of clinical support. Like, I think a lot about Claire's like clinical systems, like I love that so much. And I think through those multiple layers and that professional development to our analysts, we're really going to increase their overall clinical repertoires, which again will ultimately directly benefit our clients. And, really, if what we talked about connected learning and, professional development being an indicator of job satisfaction, then, if our clinicians are happier, then I'm sure our clients and our families will most certainly feel the residual effects of that. And I think, particularly with our RBTs, they probably have in my opinion, the highest risk of burnout, and, making sure that we're really carving that space out for them. So another thing that, that we've started to do is that during our monthly all staff meetings, which is, RBTs, analysts, administrative, clinical, we include a 30-minute recorded clinical presentation, which we will be housing on our LMS, with an emphasis towards RBT relevant content, but also highlighting how our analysts can then support their RBTs based on that content. So again, I think our main objective here, really building out those layers of support.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I mean, how much the field has grown, and to see these great organizations building that structure. It to me, it's just so impressive. I could listen to you guys talk about it all day. It's just so impressive to me to hear what you guys are doing to advance the field and then get your clinicians out there trained, supported to be able to provide the best services possible. It sounds like, oh, duh, that's how it should be, but like it's just been this process, right, for organizations to get to that point where before we were just strung so thin, just trying to get somebody there to see a client. Now it seems like I see more organizations such as yourselves kind of taking a step back and saying, okay, what can we do to really build this really strong infrastructure that will support our clinicians and provide the best services, and really taking a step back to look at how to do that is really cool to see that.
Yeah, the other thing I want to add to that, Heather, those are great observations, was that, with both of your organizations, Claire and Nicole, like this professional learning, professional development is like in a top level executive, like, it's just like a sponsored thing. It's like being built into your organizations. And, a lot of the times, like, we work with customers who don't necessarily have that total executive buy-in. So, maybe, as we're getting close to kind of wrapping up here, what are some suggestions or sort of helpful hints on how to, for, champions that want to kind of build this in their organization without that kind of top-down support, what could they do? What are some ideas or takeaways that they could apply, to establish programs similar to what you both are building?
That's a really good question, and I'm speaking from such, honestly, like a place of privilege in that I come from an organization. Our chief operating officer is a BCBA by trade. There's always a clinician at the table. Our CEO is the mother of a child with a disability or special needs. So and I've only chosen to work for organizations that focus on training and development. So I think this is kind of a hard question for me to answer, other than I would say lead by example, and that if you are in an organization where training and development isn't necessarily coming from the top down, like little things that you can do. How are you supporting your students? Are you showing up for them? If you're supervising people for the BACB, there's curriculums you can buy. Of course, it's an investment, but it's probably, time is money, it's probably less expensive than coming up with it on your own. And then I would say, if it's something that's important to you, look for an organization that aligns with your values. And I don't know if that's what you want to hear, Dave, but
I didn't mean for this to be a recruiting pitch, but you guys go for it,
Sorry.
No, I think that's good. I've had that conversation recently about that. I'm not in a leadership or a management position. Well, like, you can lead by example, though. You can lead in your own little sphere of influence. So that's very good. How about you, Nicole? Do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I really echo Claire again. I think it's just the little things that add up to larger impact. And I think back to, when I was first kind of right out of graduate school and transitioning, into a clinical supervisor role. And I reflected back on my graduate training and I was like, wow, like I was so just fortunate to have such great mentors in my experience, and so that was a big thing for me. It's like I want to give that same experience to other people, and so how can I do that on a clinical supervisor level? And there were little things that we started to do, like study sessions for the BCBA exam. Like, can we meet, like, well, now it might be via Zoom, but like, can we have coffee or a drink like after work for an hour, and like we focus on a specific study topic? Or can you have like a local journal club? I know some of our clinics in the past, it was like, okay, we're going to have like one BCBA who kind of gets the articles together, sends it out, and then whoever wants to participate can. But it's a great opportunity again for establishing that community for people that want to join. And even like group supervision for some of our supervisees, it's like the BACB provides this framework to allow for group supervision to count. But I feel like, how often do we hear where organizations have group supervision? Maybe or maybe not. But really, if you're a clinical supervisor and you have a couple supervisees, like, hey, like let's get together and have an hour group supervision over lunch or something. That again is low response effort, but I think those small, meaningful interactions, I think, especially when it comes to mentorship and supervision, are going to really, impact a lot of individuals' lives and, for the future of the field.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's like pay it forward is that one. Is that, right? So do you think having these programs makes you more competitive in terms of recruiting talent?
I would like to think so, Dave.
Database question, Dave. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll tell you in a year and a half.
Okay.
Exactly. Like, what's the long-term outcome there? But I think, one of my roles was, okay, now that we have this AIT program, well, let me go back to our employee experience and success department, our recruiting team, to say like, hey, like, are y'all able to also speak to the great things that we're doing, clinically and training? So if you do have an RBT coming in that's interested in pursuing certification, you can make sure to, highlight that as like, this is an added benefit for the organization. And I think it's been important for us too to even remind our current team members of like, hey, like here's all the awesome professional development opportunities you have. Like, you have these through Central Reach Institute, there's BHCOE Virtual Academy, like that we have access to. It's like all these ongoing CEU opportunities. It's like, wow, like I've never had this like much free access to continuing education content, ever in my career. So, and I had a lot of analysts like, oh yeah, like, wow, I've been working for Breakthrough, but I didn't, remember that I had access to that. So I think even just like ongoing reminders to our even current clinical team, like, yes, like this is the culture and community that we want to establish, and let's make sure that we're utilizing all of our resources on an ongoing basis.
That's great. Well, I think we have gotten close on time, so if you wanted to do the honors.
Well, thank you so much for attending our LMS customer experience panel discussion with Claire Ellis and Dr. Nicole McMillan. It was such a pleasure for both myself and Dave to get an hour to chat with you guys and pick your brains and see all the cool things you guys are doing at your organization. And we appreciate you all listening in.